was my Pittsburgh Steelers losing 27-13 to the Philadelphia Eagles in Lincoln Financial Field. I mean, I didn't catch the first half of this game. However, I have watched the highlights. And I mean, I think, does it all whittle down to one play from Najee Harris and his drop pass that he got? I mean, I know it was more like a run. It was a run, but back for a run. But it felt like the Steelers were sort of, going to the halftime 17-13. It felt like we were on their heels, giving them something to be worried about. And then after that play, it just we couldn't seem to be able to string anything together. It held Barkley up really well, as predicted, because of AJ Brown's sort of outburst in the weekend before. It felt like they were targeting him a lot. Devontae Smith had a good game for the Eagles. I mean, they had 401 total yards, the Eagles. They were pretty fantastic. But it felt like that all felt like it was in the second half, really, in this game.
Yeah, it was a difficult one, wasn't it, for the Steelers? I think this was always going to be a very tough matchup, given the way that the Eagles' defense has been playing over the last few weeks, and they do seem to only be getting better. So it was always going to be tough. I don't want to blame it all on Najee dropping the ball at the point where he did, or he never really got the ball in the first place, but it kind of felt like it was just one step too far for the Steelers, a little bit. A little bit. And I think in order to win these sort of games, I think the Steelers need to be 100% fit. They need all their players out there, and to not have Pickens out there again was a real issue for them. So when you take Pickens away from that receiving core, there's not a lot. I mean, Pat Freiermuth is solid as a tight end, but after that, Calvin Austin is a speedster and isn't too bad. But you need something to sort of
you then go to Ben Skowronek, who's bounced around the league, Mike Williams,
it's not
teams and not been fit last few years. And
I know you could argue that if every team lost their number one wide receiver, they would be a lot poorer. But I feel like there are teams where it affects them more than others, and the Steelers are definitely one of them teams. The Eagles' defense just completely bottled up the run, stopped that completely, and so basically forced Russell Wilson into passing it. And then because you haven't got George Pickens there's a limit to what you're going to get from the other guys that are there. So I think that was the real problem for the Steelers. They just couldn't really do much offensively. And the Eagles, I thought the Eagles just, I mean, in a way, it's kind of nice to see that they can do it without Barkley having an amazing game. And I think that
he was injured, it felt like.
Yeah, he sort of kept coming in and out, didn't he? And it was strange. But I kind of felt like they probably knew, this Steelers defense is pretty solid against the run, does pretty well. They knew that if there is a weakness on the Steelers defense, then it is sort of their secondary, and it is being able to stop the passing game. And so they kind of went quite heavy on that. I mean, Barkley did have 19 carries, and obviously Hurts had a load as well, but I just kind of feel like they did prioritize the passing game a bit more because they knew that was the way they could beat the Steelers, and they did it pretty efficiently. And I think, AJ Brown 110 yards, Devon Smith 109 yards. That's kind of exactly what they needed to do. And I think, you mark one of the guys out the game, you go to the other one. I think that was just as simple as what it was, and it showed that Jalen Hurts can play this way. It's just a case of why would you change what's working most of the time, and that was it, really.
I think this is a good litmus test for the Steelers after not being fully fit. I mean, TJ Watt is now injured and won't be at the Ravens game with a minor injury. So how injured was he in this game in sections? He didn't seem it to me overly in most of the game. Him and Lane Johnson had a really fantastic battle. And you're right. I mean, the criticism at the start of the season for Eagles was, why are they not giving it to Barkley more? This is what's going to make them win. And then they've done that the stats they were putting up yesterday between weeks 1 and 4 and then 4 onwards was remarkable about, since they've moved to Barkley, how more efficient their offense has been. And how much points are scored, the differentials, like it felt almost like, oh, well, actually the Eagles are becoming a little bit more one dynamic, even though they've got two stud wide receivers, an amazing tight end who didn't play yesterday. And actually they sort of defunct, they defunct that yesterday, really, and showed that they can. Now, I would argue, I think a secondary will do better against Hurts. That's been my criticism for a long time about Steelers, though I think it is vastly improved this year. We don't have a great secondary. Dante Jackson had a bit of a knock as well. Joe Porter's still learning. Mink is incredible, and then Deshaun Elliott, who's been brilliant throughout the league. I mean, it's a secondary that is still developing, and linebacking core is pretty young as well. So yeah, I don't think our injuries and our lack of experience in that area, it should diminish the Eagles' win here, because they played a really efficient game and they really controlled their own destiny in this game. We saw a bit of a prodding joke that the Minkah Fitzpatrick hit on Barkley was a little bit rough or a bit dirty. I generally have not seen the tackle still. Like, I know I was bickering and bantering with Gareth on our WhatsApp group page, but did you think, because there was a bit of a scuffle as well where Washington sort of took Slay for a ride and into the end zone, and they had a bit of a to-do? Is it just sport being sport rather than anything malicious?
Yeah, I kind of felt like, I mean, this is what happens in these games. It's like there was a bit of needle all the way through it. And it kind of, to me, it felt like it was both sides. There was a bit where Jalen Carter was kind of like just, was just sort of like being incredibly aggressive for kind of no real reason at a certain point. And I mean, yeah, if you really want to if you want to get sort of really analytical on it, you could probably come out and go, yes, he's sort of gone for his ankle. Yes, he's kind of like twisted it a little bit and stuff like that. But it happens, doesn't it? In these games, it's like it happens all the time. And I mean, the one that I think was probably, I would argue, was worse was the one on AJ Brown, where, I mean, I thought the whole point of these hip drop tackles were meant to be going out of the game. And yet, to me, you look at it and it's like, well, it's pretty close to being a hip drop tackle. I mean, that's the one, really. And now it looks like the Brown could potentially miss, it doesn't seem like a lot, but could potentially miss a game. That is probably what I would say, when you've got an official right in front of it as well, that's the one that should really be being looked at. The Fitzpatrick one, yeah, you could if you wanted to, but it happens in all games. You see it all the time where it's like, guys are sort of like, they're going into tackle and they're not 100% on their feet and they slip and they sort of, just get the wrong angle. And you see it all the time with the rough in the passer call, don't you, as well? It's like,
yeah.
You see these rough in the passer
the sliding. I mean,
exactly.
Yesterday, that really is, I think, Kenny Pickett's fault after he did that fake slide a couple of years ago.
Yeah,
it changed everything in a way where it was like, hang on a minute, like, we've actually got to commit to
the defender's already going. Like, he's already kind of left the ground in order to make the tackle, and yet you're going to argue that it's too late, and so you're going to penalise him for it. I think it's difficult. And then sometimes officials they let more go because of the type of game it is, because they know that certain guys are going up against each other. We moan like anything when all they do is throw flags. And so, the last thing that you want to see all the time is just constantly players being penalised all the time. So I think you could have done, if you really wanted to, if you want to go by the sort of like the laws and the rules and really 100% by it, you probably could have got Fitzpatrick on something there. And, like I say, the one on AJ Brown could have been another one that could have been a hip drop tackle. But I felt like the officiating crew just decided that they were going to let a lot go in this, and they just kind of let them get on with it. And that's, to be honest, is kind of what we want to see half the time. So
I will give a special shout out to this Eagles defense that's really coming into its own in last few weeks. I mean, some of these guys, like, Zach Brown, probably best linebacker in the league this year. Cooper DeJean, Quinion Mitchell, that looks like, I mean, to be honest, us being smarter people around the draft were in hysterics at how Cooper DeJean got to the Eagles when he was quite noticeably a candidate for a first-round pick and still dropped. And Quinion Mitchell even was a player that people were discussing being a top 15 pick. And they got both of them. And, and the guys that they've got, Nolan Smith's come into their own a bit more. Josh Sweat wasn't the most notable pass rusher for them 2 seasons ago and has stepped into that Hassan Reddick sort of shoes really well. Jalen Carter's doing great. Jordan Davis feels like the odd one out a little bit at the minute. He's still good, but he sort of came in with so much promise and has sort of been left to the wayside a little bit by everyone else. But they seem to. We've said it for the Eagles, it's depth. They've got such good depth at most of their positions, offensively and defensively. Calcaterra, the tight end for them, even a decent game. Like they've got guys everywhere, so that's just going to continue. And it wouldn't shock me. I would put good money on now. This is an NFC Championship team for me. I think they're good enough to go and do that now. If they stay fit as well, I think that is really important as well. But they need to stay fit.
They're really good, and you're right about the NFC Championship thing. They should be getting that. Really, they're the number 2 seed still, I believe, but it's it should be them and the Lions if the Lions can stay fit, which they can't. So.
Let's turn our attention